Good morning, all. I hope I'm audible to all. Okay. Good morning, all. On behalf of Center for Research and Development and School of Pharmacy, Rai University, Ahmedabad, I, Ashish Rami, welcome you all in this webinar on current scenario, scope, and challenges in pharmaceutical industries on 19th June in collaboration with Saga Laboratories. We hope you all are safe and in good health. In this current situation of pandemic, we have truly understood the importance of pharmaceutical industry. It is the only sector where we are keeping hope of some invention and get remedy to get rid of COVID-19. We are here to discuss and present such issues regarding the current trend of pharmaceutical industry, which are the new innovation, developments, and how various challenges will be faced in pharmaceutical industry. So, for throwing some light on these aspects, we have with us very well-known tycoon from pharmaceutical industry who is entrepreneur and pharmacist, Dr. Virendra Shah with us. So, welcome Virendra sir.
Thank you.
Okay, here now let me take an opportunity to give a brief introduction about Dr. Virendra Shah. He is Senior National Vice President of Indian Drug Manufacturers Association, IDMA, Gujarat State Board. He is Vice Chairman, Indian Drugs Manufacturers Association. He is Secretary of IDMA. He is Chairman of National Council on Drugs and Pharmaceuticals, SHM. He is Honorary Joint Secretary of Federation of Pharmaceutical Entrepreneurs. He is member in Foreign Trade Committee, Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is member Health and Medical Tourism Committee, GCCI. He was Joint Secretary, Indian Pharmaceutical Association. He was Vice Chairman, Regulatory Subcommittee, IDMA. He is member IPR Committee, GCCI, Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Apart from his current positions, he has won awards like IDMA GP Nair Award, BV Patel Gold Medal, Bansilal Hargovindas Gold Medal, and he has published so many various papers in national and international journal. He is currently working as a director Saga Laboratories. So, very warm welcome, Dr. Virendra sir. So now I hand over to you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rami, for having me here. A very good morning, friends, and I hope you are all safe and doing well. Let me just. Now, is the presentation can be seen, Dr. Rami?
Sir, you can just share the screen.
Yeah. Is the screen? Can it be seen?
No, it is still not there.
Yes.
Yeah, now it is there. I am just adding it.
All right. So, a very good morning, friends, and thank you, Dr. Rami, for having me here. Usually, when we speak of what we do with this time, we have many negative connotations, but let me start with a very positive data that I have. In the month of April 2020, when the entire system was shut down, the Indian pharmaceutical industry could get a growth of 1/4 of a percentage in its exports. In the month of May, the exports as compared to the May of 2019 has grown by 27%, which means in the month of April and May, the Indian pharmaceutical industry has exported with a positive growth of 17%. And this can show the strength of the industry that we are into. In what we can say, challenging time, India has been able to supply hydroxychloroquine tablets to over 62 countries. And despite all the controversies and news going on whether hydroxychloroquine is useful or not, but ICMR has come with a guideline stating that it is very useful in prevention, and so the 62 countries in the world believe. And proudly, India being the largest manufacturer of this drug, we have been able to supply to 62 countries to save life of hundreds of thousands of people. If we just go back a few years, there was this very widely published case of Greg Jeffrey. Greg Jeffrey is a Australian citizen, and he was diagnosed with hepatitis C. The cost of this drug he was prescribed, which is sofosbuvir, the cost of this drug was almost 100,000 Australian dollars for the entire treatment. And this gentleman probably could not afford it. With some advice, he traveled to India. He picked up the same medicine from Indian market, something around 1,500 US dollars, which is about 1.5% of the price that he could have paid in Australia. He went through the treatment and he was cured. And this gentleman then started India Buyers Club, where he started helping other Australian citizens who were suffering from hepatitis C to procure the low-cost, high-quality drug from India. When the entire world is talking of imports from China, this is a magnificent example of a movie that was successful in 2018, which if you translate in English, it means Dying to Survive. And this is a real life story of Lu Yung. He's a Chinese leukemia patient, and he was prescribed a treatment which costed him about $3,000 a month. And it could go on for a year or two, even more. Not being able to afford, he again came to India, sourced the medicine, which was almost about $30 a month, which is less than 1% of what it could cost in China. He takes this medicine, gets cured himself, and then he started smuggling this drug from India to China. And he supplied the smuggled drugs just to help almost 1,000 Chinese patients. Now, one time he got caught in the smuggling activity and he was produced to the court. Based on his life story and why he did this and how he saved life of thousands of Chinese, he even got a pardon from the court. This is an example of what a successful and powerful pharmaceutical industry can do. It can save lives of hundreds of thousands of people. It can reduce mortality. It can improve the quality of life of people. It can add productive years to your life. And that is why we proudly call ourselves the pharmacy of the world. Now, if you see the laurels of this industry, we are the world's largest generic manufacturer. We have the highest number of US FDA approved plants in India, outside US. We produce almost 1 in every 5 pills sold worldwide. So almost 20% of the production of medicines that are sold worldwide actually are from India, and almost 1/3 of the vaccines sold worldwide are from India. In terms of volumes, because we contribute to almost 20%, we are the third largest manufacturer. In terms of value, we are 10th because our medicines are quite low priced. We are the fourth largest net exporters, and almost 200 countries globally depend on us for their requirement of essential medicines. Now, let's look at the situation as on today and how and what opportunities it presents. The domestic pharmaceutical industry is almost 20.7 billion US dollars, and as per the data available at the end of March 2020, it was growing around 9% plus. The compounded annual growth rate for the last 10, 20 years has been that the pharma industry has always grown almost 1.5 times the Indian GDP growth. So when the GDP was growing around 9%, we were growing around 13.5%. Today we are growing around 9 to 10%. So it has always outsmarted the national GDP growth. There are three major segments that we have. The chronic segment, which includes the diabetes, cancer, hypertension, and all sorts of chronic diseases. This segment is growing very faster in India. We have an acute segment, which is mainly of pain, antibiotics, and similar products. It is growing a little bit slower, and this is a trend globally. Wellness is one sector that is picking up very fast. Almost 96% of the medicines sold in India are off patented by value. About 4% are patented products. We have something called a national list of essential medicines, where the prices are controlled by the government through an order called the Drug Price Control Order. And for various reasons that we'll discuss later, the growth in the next 10 years is likely to be almost 12% or 12% plus. And when we say we are growing 12.5%, it means we are going to reach from 41 billion. Currently, the industry size is 41 billion. 20.7 is the domestic industry, and $20.3 billion is the exports that we do. And out of this $41 billion, we are expecting that with a 12% CAGR for the next decade, we are likely to reach almost a 120 to 150 billion US dollar industry in the next 10 years. So you can understand the massive amount of opportunities that are there in this industry. If you look at our global position in terms of exports, we are among the first 10 exporting countries in the world by value. Of course, third in terms of the volume of products that we export. In terms of the net exports, we are number fourth, first being Switzerland, followed by Germany, Ireland, and India. So we are the fourth best net exporters of pharmaceuticals, and that is even by terms of value, which is a profoundly important position. As per the WHO classification, we are among the very rare countries who have the capacity to manufacture across the segment. We have our companies involved in research and development. We have our companies in API manufacturing, and we also have our companies in the formulation manufacturing. So, friends, this was to give you an overall picture of what the Indian pharmaceutical industry is, what are the possible numbers that we could expect in next 10 years, and what opportunities are there for the grab. Now, it was sailing very smoothly, and suddenly in the year 2020, we saw a big downturn, and the entire world has gone into a spin. The many businesses, they have either had to shut down, they had to lay off people, they had to repurpose. We know so many car companies, they repurposed their business, started producing ventilators. In India, we have seen distilleries, sugarcane factories, so many FMCG companies repurposing their marketing to introduce the sanitizers and many anti-infective drugs. In fact, during the COVID, a lot of FMCG companies in India who are not into pharma, they have come into pharma, and they have started branding their hand sanitizers and surface disinfectants. So the COVID has come with its own load to the entire economy, to the society. During this challenging time, as we call it, there were a lot of changes that have been precipitated in this industry. And I want to highlight some of them because these changes as of now, look to have a very long-term impact on this industry. The most important thing that people, identified as a constraint in manufacturing, in marketing, was the supply chain. When the lockdown started almost across the globe, the domestic transportation became almost impossible. The airports are not working. The seaports are also very disturbed. Some of them are working, but we don't have people to handle. And this is not in India, it has happened globally. And when we are dealing with essential drugs, supply chain disruption is a major, major stumble. Once your supply chain is disturbed, your products are not able to reach the patients in time, you are on for a big problem because these are essential things. The patient cannot wait. If he needs the medicine today, if he needs an injection today, the patient needs it today. It cannot be deferred for tomorrow or day after. And therefore, during the COVID, the industry could realize that supply chain management becomes a very, very important aspect of their business strategy. To the extent that earlier, everybody used to talk of efficiencies. So we had lean management, lean manufacturing, lean supply chain. If you look today and henceforth, it looks like we are now moving from lean to resilient. We need the supply chain not dependent on one place or one unit or one physical location. We don't want to put all the eggs in one basket. So companies have started removing their supply chain from one concentration, distributing it, developing alternative modes of transports, developing alternative vendors, because in pharma, usually you are locked up with a very minimal number of vendors for your requirements for APIs, KSMs, everything. So from efficiency or lean supply chain, probably we are likely to see a change into a resilient supply chain management where we have several options. They may not be efficient, but you need options because, God forbid, something happens, your supply chain should remain intact. So I think one of the first and the most important messages, game changers for the pharma industry because of COVID, has been the supply chain. Like our goods were not able to move, our APIs were not able to come, we had another problem with the front line. The OPDs were not working, or the doctors were not accessible, and rightly so. Everybody wanted to maintain a distance, and therefore the people working on the ground, the medical representatives, they were not able to call on the doctors. They were not able to introduce products, and they were not able to physically meet. Even as we speak today, many of the doctors do not want to meet the medical representatives as often. Given that the role of educating a doctor, interacting with a doctor is very important in success of any marketing team, the inclusion of digital marketing has become another changer because of COVID. Of course, it's not going to be totally digital, but it is going to be, as people call it, phygital, which is a combination of physical marketing and digital marketing. When we say combination of physical and digital marketing, it means that, well, you will have doctor calls, but not as often. So maybe if a doctor is, interacting with a medical representative twice in a month for a specific company, he would rather meet once in a month or once in 2 months. And therefore, the digital marketing becomes very important tool to reach out to your prescribers. Also, many of the patients have started counseling online. There are digital platforms that play a role of interaction between the patient and the doctor. And therefore, as pharmaceutical companies, accessing such type of platforms for marketing would also become very important. The list is endless. There are different ways in which digital marketing will gain prominence, but I believe this is another game changer that the current pandemic has given rise to. Research. If you see last 20 years, we hardly had a new anti-infective in the market. The last blockbuster anti-infective probably was ciprofloxacin, which was almost 35 years back. It is because most of the research in new chemical entities happens in the West, where they never had issues of infections. And therefore, most of the research was done in chronic segment, in cancer and diabetes, in cardiovascular, in psychiatry. Very little research was done in infectious diseases. With the current situation that we're into, the world has come to a new reality that infections can happen suddenly anywhere. And therefore, it looks like that in the next few years is likely to be a major focus on research in infectious diseases. So the focus on chronic will now shift. I won't say shift, but it would include a lot of research into infectious diseases as well. Work from home was rarely seen in pharmaceutical industry. But during the current pandemic, what came out was that many of the very essential staff, couldn't reach the plants, couldn't reach the offices. Many of the marketing people could not go to the market. And therefore, work from home was the new reality that Indian industry uh, got to. Working from home brings a lot of new dynamics, and it could include preparing the infrastructure to do it, training and retraining people to understand the nitty-gritties of how to work from home. It's not just a physical thing. There's a lot of training and mental attitude that is required to efficiently work from home, to team from home with people in the office, in the plant, and in the field. And pharma industry is learning how to do it better. Healthcare, if you see the total spend of healthcare in India was hardly about 1% of the GDP, 1 to 1.5% of GDP, and so was it in many of the countries. And even in countries like US, where the spend was over 5%, we have seen that in case of pandemic, the healthcare infrastructure was not enough. The pandemic has made us realize that it is as much important to invest in healthcare as it is in defense. And most of the countries are likely to invest a lot of money in healthcare. This investment could come in form of the physical infrastructure investment. It can come in terms of procuring medications. It can come in form of better healthcare coverage to its citizens. It can come on making emergency teams to respond in case of future pandemics. It can come in form of maintaining emergency activities for a nation. Healthcare would become a part of almost all activities that a nation focuses on, that a society focuses on. And therefore, I'm very sure that a lot of investment is expected to come to the healthcare sector. And finally, the use of technology. We have seen that digital marketing, work from home, even in supply management, the use of technology has become prominent. And as we fight to get a vaccine or a drug that can treat COVID or that can stop COVID, use of machine learning, artificial intelligence, data analytics. The data analytics of the patients who have gone through COVID can give an immense information on what could be the potential drugs, what could be the potential way to produce a vaccine, and how these things can be managed. So earlier, most of the AI was used in a very small portion of the pharma industry. Now it will become a mainstream tool because it enables you to cut down your development time. It enables you to cut down your time that you spend in research and development. And when you have a powerful analytical tool, use of technology, use of data, I think that's going to be the next important step for this industry to be ready for. There are a lot of other things that could happen, but I think these are one of the most important things that are going to change post COVID for this industry. Now, when we say that, now what we spoke in the post COVID till now was mostly short to medium term. But let us also look at the long term opportunities and scenario that is going likely to emerge in this industry. If when we say that this industry is likely to go from 41 billion is on today to about 120 to 150 billion dollars in the next 10 years, it is phenomenal, but it needs very strong drivers. Otherwise, it will just remain an intent. Now, what are the key drivers that are going to shape the dynamics of this industry in the coming probably 10 to 15 years? One of the major changes in the domestic scenario is the extensive medical insurance. We know that the current government, the Modi government, has come out with several initiatives, including the Ayushman Bharat. Now, this kind of initiatives gives a massive medical insurance or coverage to a lot of unprivileged people, to people on the bottom of the pyramid. And therefore, these people are likely to come into the mainstream of treatments. As per a data, as per a research, almost 40% of India depends on the traditional medicine and they do not enter into the mainstream medical treatments. With initiatives like Ayushman Bharat, that large chunk is likely to come to the mainstream. And when these billions of people are available for treatment, they come forward to take treatments, for surgeries. This industry obviously will have a lot of more to supply to the government, hospitals, to the people who are prescribed these medications and treatments. And this is going to be a very important driver in driving forward in making this big apple bigger. So I think extensive medical insurance is going to play a very important role on where this industry is going. It also will change one more factor. Once the medical insurance is reimbursed through the insurance companies or the government, now your payer, your reimbursement person is not the patient. So the patient, the out-of-pocket expenses, which India are currently almost 80% plus, more than 80% of the medical expenses are paid from the pocket of the people who go for it. With the medical insurance and similar coverages, this OOPS, the OOPS, is drastically going down to almost 50 or highest of 50-55%, which means that almost half of your reimbursement is not going to come from the market. It is going to come from these medical insurance companies and from the government. And when that happens, the price negotiations for the pharmaceutical marketer is happening on a very different plane. So people will have in the industry will have to understand the pharmacoeconomics and how to price their products. Another driver that is likely to frame the next 10-15 years is the awareness. The health awareness of people is on the rise, and especially in times like COVID, people have realized the importance of wellness, and therefore it is most likely that you're going to see a sudden transformation of focus from illness to wellness. And when we say it's a transformation from illness to wellness, it means that a lot of preventive medicine, a lot of wellness products are going to gain a lot of ground, and this will become a part of daily routine for a lot of people, just like gym is getting more and more common for most of the people, or your evening walk is becoming a part of your daily life. Wellness products are very likely to become more and more a bigger and bigger part of the daily life, and therefore there is going to be a bigger market for wellness products in India in the next 10 to 15 years to come. This is coupled with the increase in household incomes. India, friends, is a emerging economy, and the average per capita income is on the up. When you have more disposable income to your shelf, you have the opportunity to spend a little more on your own. So this is going to augment the overall wellness business, because people will have that little extra money to spend on their own, to spend on the gyms, to spend on the wellness medicines, to spend on things that will make like your immunity products. So this kind of wellness business is going to go up. Also, with the increase in household incomes, it has been seen in most countries that they are getting more and more conscious about their health, their treatments, and it could ultimately give a boost to the pharmaceutical industry and to the healthcare industry. Atmanirbhar Bharat, as we call Vocal for Local, is another initiative that has recently been taken by the government, and I'm very sure that it is going to change the face of this industry. And I'll tell you why. Currently, almost $4 billion worth of the active pharmaceutical ingredients, the APIs, and their key starting materials, the KSM as we call them, are imported by the Indian pharmaceutical company. And almost 68% of these imports happens from China. Another 32% happens from Europe and some other countries. The As a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, we have a very strong API policy that has just been launched. This API policy is going to subsidize almost 7,000 crores worth of money to the API manufacturing industries. They've identified almost 53 molecules where India has prominent dependence on for imports. And as a strategic move, the government is spending almost 3,000 crores for the parks, the API parks, 3 API parks that are going to be constructed that will host these companies, and about 7,000 crores is being given as a subsidy to the API manufacturers of these 53 products. Those investing for the fermentation based APIs are being given 20% of their incremental turnover as a subsidy. Those with chemical or synthetic drugs, they are to be given 10% subsidy on the incremental turnover. This policy is going to be a big game changer, and we are not only likely in the next 5 years or 7 years stopping the imports of APIs, most of the APIs, but we are also likely to become an important powerhouse for exports of APIs. So maybe from 4 billion of imports in the next 10 years, with the initiative of the API policy, we likely to become maybe around 6 billion of exports in API. And this tremendous change will come with it, will bring a huge opportunity in the API manufacturing sector in India. Apart from that, since a lot of global companies have decided, or looks like they want to decide to de-risk their supply chain, we are expecting that because of its strength, a lot of contract manufacturing from the developed world for pharmaceuticals will come to India. And when it comes to India, the local industry will definitely get a big boost. So both in API, formulation, and even in the wellness sector, the next 10 or 15 years are likely to bring a big boost. Friends, currently the overall pharmaceutical sector worldwide is about 1.24 trillion US dollars. 1.24 trillion, out of which almost $400 billion plus are the patented products in the US. Now, in the next 5 to 7 years, more than half of these drugs are going to go off patent. And usually it has been seen that when a product gets off patent, the overall value picture of that particular molecule comes down to almost 5%. So when it was patented, for example, and the market size for that particular molecule was 100 million US dollars, usually as soon as it gets off patented and the, it is open for manufacturing to a lot of players, the value becomes just about 5 to 6 million dollars from 100 million dollars. So when it becomes off patent, most of the companies source companies in India who can manufacture these off patented products, where India has a very significant strength. So in the next 5 or 10 years, when a huge amount of products get off patented, India is likely to capture a lot of this business from the international world. And the last and again the most important drivers of entire business is going to be the technology, and this technology is on the patient interface. So as we progress in the next 10 to 15 years, the health tech businesses are going to really gain massive businesses, capturing data from the patient through gadgets, capturing data from the hospitals, capturing data from your tests, maintaining the electronic health records, anonymizing the electronic health records, using these health records for statistical and development and research work. This kind of business is going to get a big boost. Any form that makes life easy for the patient as well as for the doctor in terms of the use of technology is also going to gain a very fundamental growth. So probably health technology, which currently is limited to maybe your iPhone, or your iWatch, or your very basic data capturing, this industry is going to gain massive businesses, massive growth. In terms of the percentage growth, I think it is even going to be much bigger than the growth of pharmaceutical industry. And this is also overall going to create an ecology that promotes the pharmaceutical industry. Now, as I understand, there are a lot of students that are a part of this podcast, this webinar. Uh, what is the scope? We know what the industry today is, what it is likely to happen post COVID, what it is likely to be next 10 to 15 years. What is the scope for students? The answer to this could be the scopes are immense, but it depends upon what you are ready to take. There are scopes in entrepreneurship, there are scopes in jobs, in professional activities, but it all depends on what and how you are. So I take it this way: if you have strong leadership abilities as a student, if you think you have enough resources to take risks, and you have very important soft skills like team building, like handling stress, you are a good candidate for entrepreneurship. And when you say entrepreneurship, there are going to opportunities in all the spheres. You can go for a good startup that can amplify your ideas. You can invest into R&Ds, and R&Ds always doesn't mean new chemical entities and basic research. It also means developing bioequivalent formulations. It also means developing new drug delivery systems. There is a lot. It also means, like currently we are talking of repurposing of drugs, whether an existing drug can be used in this condition or that condition. R&D does not necessarily mean very huge business. It also means that if you have a good team that can think laterally, You can invest into R&D business. API industry is going to be a very good place to invest. As I said, government is going all out to support this industry so that our import dependence is almost reduced or removed, and that we become an important export source for. So API industry is something which can give massive investment opportunities. Formulation industry, India has been number one in the world in generics. So formulation industry is definitely going to grow at a almost 12.5% in India, and probably much more in international markets because of the products getting off patented, because of supply chain issues. So formulation industry also offers very good opportunities. Health tech, as I said, is going to be a very prominent industry, at least on the patient interface, data capturing, analyzing the data is again a very good place to invest. So there are a lot of scopes for entrepreneurs. However, if you feel that you have a 9 to 5 temperament, you are very knowledge driven, but you do not want to take a lot of risk, your soft skills are such that you would prefer to do a job as compared to business, there are going to be good jobs in all the spheres, whether it is the center, whether it is the production, whether it is the quality aspects, the QC and the QA, in the regulatory and quality management systems, marketing, and technology. So there are going to be jobs and business opportunities all along in the next 10-15 years. It is more important to introspect within you and try to understand what are your key strengths and weaknesses and how would you like to position, because every opportunity that you get needs a set of skills. And especially when we talk of industry academia gaps, we all know that there is a big gap right now. And this gap is not only because of academic institutions, also because of the some issues on the part of the industry. But we know that there are gaps, and this gap need to be understood before you jump into a job or into a business. And how, on at least on the soft skill part, you can start working on yourself on what you want to do in the future, and how, whether you have those kind of skills, whether you have this kind of temperament, you have the risk taking ability to go for a specific job or business. So I think there the future is very bright. There are a lot of opportunities, and I would just try to close with a statement of Brad Pitt, which says that let us be the ones who say that we do not accept that a child dies every 3 seconds simply because he doesn't have the drugs that you and I have. There is a big gap of what the world needs and what the world is going to need in the next 10 or 15 years, and what we can do. And therefore, there are huge opportunities, and this is a wonderful industry to be in. So, thank you very much, friends. I would now request Dr. Rami to start
Yes,
the
sir.
interaction.
This session is really very much interesting. And we have few questions from our participants. So here we have with us Professor Pradeep Singh, Professor Pradeep Kumar Singh, who is Head of Science, School of Arts, Science and Commerce, Rai University, who would be carrying ahead with the question answer section.
Good morning, sir.
Good
I'm
morning,
Pradeep
Mr.
Kumar
Singh.
Singh, and good
Please
morning,
come.
participants. We have some few questions from participants. Question number first one is what will be effect on generic medicine in India due to post COVID-19 effect?
See, when we speak of generic medicines India, if you see the international term, everything that is sold in India is generic because it is not patented. That is how the world looks at generics. We, of course, have branded generics and the commodity generics. So I believe you are asking me a question on what is going to be the status of commodity generics in India. And I would say that when we talk of affordability, uh, the business for commodity generics is definitely going to go up. There will be more opportunities because people want to spend less, especially in the chronic segment. uh, the commodity generics will have a bigger role to play.
Thank you, sir. And second question is how far the pharma wood has reached in inventing medicine to control COVID-19?
See, we must understand that a typical invention or the new chemical entity, as we call it in pharma, an NCE, that is approved for use in a specific condition. A typical development cycle is between 10 to 15 years. And it doesn't happen overnight because there are several layers. You have almost out of 10,000 candidates, you come to one drug that is actually successful in the market. So there are a lot of technologies available in identifying the right molecules that could probably work, doing a preliminary study, identifying the products out of the 10,000, which are the first 2,000 or 1,000 that can go for the next study. And then there are several layers of phase one, phase two, phase three studies and clinical data that is to be generated in order to give an evidence that a new drug is useful in a specific condition. And therefore, it is definitely going to take time. If you see the history of previous uh, viruses that have struck mankind, if we talk of SARS and MERS and Ebola, the new drug research always takes a lot of time, and therefore today we are talking of repurposing of drugs. So you're not saying that we are developing a new drug, we are repurposing drugs. And what does repurposing essentially mean, and why it is important? When you say that a drug is already available on the shelf, you are sure that the drug is safe, it is efficacious, and it has been used in humans for a certain number of years. The only thing that you have to now check is whether the drug is useful for COVID treatment. Like remdesivir, they showed that if you use remdesivir against placebo, uh, the recovery time reduces from 15 days to 11 days. Of course, there's a small improvement, but yes, there is an evidence. Very recently, we got the repurposing of dexamethasone, especially in the life-saving conditions. We have the repurposing of hydroxychloroquine for prevention. So currently, we are talking of repurposing. And let us be very clear on that. There is no wonder drug that is going to come tomorrow. It is going to take its time. Vaccine is something that could probably come, as most experts say, by end of this year or early next year. It is because the development phase is so long.
Thank you, sir. The fourth question is, what are the job opportunities in pharmaceutical industries in post-COVID-19 effect, and what will be the generic medicine market in future?
See, I have already spoken of the opportunities in jobs and in businesses. There are going to be very good opportunities. The important thing is how well you are prepared to take that opportunity. Do you have the temperament? Now, for example, I want to work I want to take a job in a research center or in a manufacturing center. Am I technically capable of taking that work? Do I have soft skills? Because if you work in it, sometimes in industry there are pharmacists who come to the industry, and most of the time we have seen that in the first year or two or three, operator that has been running a machine for last 10 or 15 or 20 years is much more equipped to handle the product issues or to handle the shop floor than a pharmacist. So how can you make yourself better than that person who is probably ITI level person in running the shop floor? So it's depend upon how much you are able to take it, whether it is job or business. The opportunities are definitely there. On your question on generics, again, friends, let us understand that there is a big difference in the international terminology of generics and why generics is important internationally, and the Indian definition that we use. Internationally, there is an innovator, and anybody but the innovator is a generic. To cite you an example, Lipitor is the innovator for atorvastatin, and all other atorvastatin launched after the expiry of patents of Lipitor would be the generic of atorvastatin. Internationally, when this patent expires, the prices go from 100 to 5. In India, whatever we are making, 96% of the products technically are generics, whether they are branded or they are commodity. If we talk of both the markets, whether it is branded generics or the commodity generics, which are sold without brands, they all have wonderful future.
Thank you, sir. Next question is, what is the present status of API production in India and how you see API production will change in India?
I think that also I have covered. Currently, we are importing almost $4 billion of APIs annually. And out of that $4 billion worth of import, almost 68% comes from China, and the balance 32% comes from countries, especially Europe and US and some other markets. The government of India has already set up an API policy, and under this API policy, they have allocated 10,000 crores for the next 7 or 8 years, out of which they are spending 3,000 crores to develop three bulk drug parks, which will be dedicated to producing the APIs, and the balance 7,000 crores will come as subsidies. And this is PLI, which is the product linked incentive, which means that those people who have invested in manufacturing of these 52 APIs or their KSMs that have been identified by the government, and you invest into them, out of whatever business you do, if your product is a fermentation based product, you will get a 20% straight away subsidy. If your product is not a fermentation, it's a synthesis based product, you get 10% subsidy on your incremental turnover year by year for the next 7 years. I think the policy goes up to year 27-28. So this is going to be a major game changer. And what industry believes is that out from the $4 billion of import, we're likely to go up to $6 billion of exports, which means there is going to be a massive increase in business up to the tune of $10 billion in API. So this industry is already, there is a lot of buzz happening. The environment clearance issues are getting sorted out. There are other non-tariff barriers that are coming, that have been addressed by the government. And looking to the seriousness of both the industry and the government, I believe that this industry is going to be a very major growth area for pharmaceuticals.
Thank you, sir. The last question is, what is time required to patent the new drug in the field of pharmaceutical industry?
See, now those who are looking for patents, let me tell you that it is not only a new chemical entity that can be patented, because a new chemical entity takes almost 10 to 15 years traditionally to come to the market. But there are a lot of Indian companies I know who have done wonderfully in new drug delivery systems. If you want to patent a new drug entity, I think it needs a massive investment and a very structured company to do that, because very few companies in the world have that capacity to and that infrastructure and those kind of resources to actually go into the research of a new chemical entity. And it typically takes about 10 to 15 years to come to market. In terms of patenting it, you can patent it at the time when you realize that you are there, you have the eureka moment, you know that this drug is going to be useful in this, you can definitely patent it then. Currently, India is a part of the international product patent regime. So any product that is patented anywhere in the world automatically has its extension of patents into India. Of course, there are rules and regulations. You have to file patent into India in certain years. You have to work the patent. If you are patenting a new chemical entity, of course, you can patent anytime when you have the eureka moment. But in the new drug delivery systems, the research is much easier. I can name one of the companies I know very well, Troika, for example. Now, Troika has patented diclofenac painless injection. They have done some other patents. If you talk of the new chemical entity, Zydus was the first company to have its own new drug entity. It was the first Indian company to do patents of a new chemical entity. So it will depend upon what kind of space you are into. But generally, it has been seen that Indians are very much good at new drug delivery systems. At even in this repurposing is done. So once you have a repurposed drugs, Indians are also very good at the fixed dose combinations. Of course, now it is gaining importance because if you know, there is an American company called Pillbox Pharmacy. They are uh, working on a similar way. They don't do a fixed dose combination, but yes, they co-pack different products that are being prescribed to you. And the same kind of model is used in India as a fixed dose combination. That is another area of research that can be of interest. So There are various areas where you can work.
Thank you very much,
Hello.
sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Viranchi, sir, Director Saga Laboratories and Saga Healthcare, sharing such a wonderful and informative knowledge of Indian pharmaceutical industries during lockdown due to COVID-19 in terms of supply chain management, digital marketing, and use of various data analysis and role of technology, and also Atmanirbhar Bharat, vocal for local with us. Thank you very much, sir. And I especially thanks to all participants. I would like to especially thanks to our Provost Dr. Anil Tomar sir, Registrar sir, Professor Lalit Adhikari sir, Deputy Registrar sir, Professor Virendra Singh Nagoria, and especially thanks to Dr. Ashish Rami sir, and also another faculty members. I would like to thank you again for making this webinar success. Thank you all. Thank you very much, sir.